What's up, everyone, and welcome to Save the Game Media's review and spoilercast discussion for Clair Obscur Expedition 33. I am your host, Kevin, and I am joined by the man who's played this game multiple times, who has the platinum, and is with me and thinking this is currently Game of the Year. Sam Heaney, how are you, my friend?
I'm doing very well. I'm still a busy boy. I'm still, as we speak, doing coverage for this game, which is
That's wild.
mind-boggling to me. But there we are. But no, I'm good. I'm looking forward to talking about it. I haven't really spoken with anybody outside of IGN, not in depth anyway. So I don't know where this conversation is going to take us, but
It's
there's a lot of places it can go.
there's certainly a lot of big plot points that I've been like you saw my like GIF reaction or like to general things as I was playing the game because you're the only one I was like, oh, I know he's beating it, so I can actually say something to him. And I know a few community members like Silk and It have rolled credits, and a few
Mm.
are playing it. But most people I know are still like in Act Two or like reaching the end of Act One. Like they're probably playing it at a much healthier pace than say I did, or maybe even you did, because it's certainly funny. Like I look on the PlayStation app, and I'm like, oh, Sam's still playing Expedition 33.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Well, um, if you are new here, this is Save the Game Media. We do podcasts and a bunch of video game related videos and shorts and anything you want. So why don't you consider subscribing to the channel? Stick around for this conversation if you have beaten Expedition 33. If not, just click that like button, save it to favorites, whatever it is on YouTube. Come back later, enjoy the discussion. We're gonna start off spoiler free, and then we're gonna go into spoilers. The spoiler free section is gonna be really short. I'm telling you right now because I want to get into the actual plot of this game. But I did ask our community over in Discord, which you can come join, link down below, for some questions, and we got two questions along the same line from Todd Oxtra and TPR. So Todd Oxtra wrote in and says, I'm not a turn-based fan, but if I try Expedition 33, is the gameplay hook early on so I'll know if it's a good fit for me? Or is it a game where it takes 10 hours to get to the good stuff? Taylor, TPR, similar. For someone like me who chronically underplays video games and has a generally tough time with turn-based games, do you think Expedition 33 is a good title to break through? Is its turn-based real-time combat actiony enough? Is it as it seemed it was that way for Sam? So two questions really asking us about the hook of the gameplay system, the loop here, if you're not into turn-based games. Sam, you are not historically a turn-based guy. How would you describe the turn-basedness of Expedition 33?
Um, I mean, I'm coming from, I guess, a primary vantage point of um, lack of knowledge. I because I haven't played that many, um, I don't know the intricacies of what does and doesn't exist in the genre, of what certain games may or may not have done in the past. But I certainly haven't played a turn-based game um, before that has. Some may argue that turn-based combat isn't really meant to be all that engaging
Mm,
in comparison to real time. But SandFall somehow made a way to make turn-based incredibly engaging, in my opinion. It's still primarily turn-based, but there are sort of real-time QTE elements. Um, without going too in depth, you have free aim as well that lets you just take shots at enemy weak points at any point on your turn. That doesn't consume your turn, it consumes your action points. But
hmm
there's a lot of nuance and intricacies to the turn-based combat that they've set up here. It feels very fresh, in my opinion. Um, Again, it feels unique. I haven't seen something like this done before. And yeah, as the guy who doesn't like turn-based games, I think that this is one of the most engaging combat systems I've played with in several years.
hmm
So take that for what you will.
So I think we can go into the actual mechanics, and if that's too spoilery, just I don't know what you're doing on this video. Come back later, but I think what Expedition 33 does really well is I'm going to preface it like this. So, as someone that does love turn based games and plays them all throughout the year, we have seen action elements get implemented more and more into games. Metaphor Refantasio, Trails Through Daybreak, and the newer Trails games. Those have kind of been leading the way, and it's a different type of action combat, right? Like it's
Mm,
not when you're in the turn based environment. It's prior to that. So when you're in the field and you see the enemy icons, you can engage them and kind of fight them, whittle them down, do some damage outside of that. Once you go into the instance turn based combat, it's a kind of standard affair there.
yeah.
This really doesn't take that approach. You can't attack enemies outside of combat. You can engage them to get that first strike, but once you're in there, that is where the action really turns up. And as you were saying, the shooting elements, which I think lifted basically straight out of Persona, except you can actually. I kind of like it better here because you don't rely on like, oh, you only have a certain number of bullets like Persona. Here it's like how if you've built up enough action, you can just rapid fire this. And like I use that a lot, especially when I know there's skills that take shields off, but if I wanted to save another skill on that character for the shield breaking, and I was like, okay, I'm intentionally going to use my gun, take shields off, hit weak points with these characters. Like, you still have that strategy, even though they've built in these real time action elements. And that comes into play even more when it's like, with QTEs and parries and knowing the enemy encounters, because once you face them a few times, you're like, okay, they have a few move sets, right? And there's a few enemies towards the end of the game where I'm like, okay, this one is named this, so I know how they're gonna do light attacks. This one's named this, they're gonna do dark attacks. Once you know how they attack and their patterns, you can really get that. Well, I'll parry now, and I was you have to be engaged because I was sitting there and I'm like, 1, 2, 3, hit the button. 1, 2, 3, hit the button. Or wait for the sword to glow. Now hit the button. Wait for the chime. Now hit the button. Like if you are just sitting there, like, oh, I'm gonna put a podcast on, chill, it's not gonna work out well for you. I'm gonna tell you that right now. Like that is not this type of game. There are times, and I don't do this often, but I'm like, this boss is hard. I'm going shrimp mode and like leaning over in my chair. You know what I'm
Hmm.
saying? So I think it's super engaging, even if you are into turn based. I still think you can find a lot to love here.
Yeah, and to Todd's point, it introduces all that stuff very early on,
Mm-hmm.
so you will be able to gauge the fundamentals of the combat really within like what 5, 10, 15 minutes.
I,
Um,
I think so because you get they what I will say is they do a great job of like, here's characters, now here's our combat system. If you don't connect with this, like they'll add a few elements like, oh, you're gonna learn jumping, right? Like
mhm,
that's not something that's probably introduced like two-ish hours later or something. And then you get a different type of parry. It's ultimately still like, hey, it's a parry, but now this is a really powerful attack, and this is going to be a really powerful counter in slow motion.
yeah,
It just kind of it kind of evolves what the system already there is. It's not something completely where is this coming from?
yeah. So you'll get a feel. Obviously, like we say, it evolves over time. But if you really, for some reason, which I would find hard to understand, if you really don't like the combat early on, then it probably isn't for you, because it
Hmm.
doesn't switch up to any fundamental degree. It just sort of builds upon it. So, but you'll know very early on, so that's a good thing.
Yeah, and in terms of like the gameplay loop, it is very much you're going to be put into these areas, and they're pretty enclosed. They get a little larger as you go on in the game, but most of them linear paths, which may not vibe for everyone if you're looking for more exploration. I found it engaging enough where I'm like, okay, follow this path to get to the main quest, which I've seen so many. I don't know if this was like a fault of the game or just people not understanding game design. And you helped me with this early on, even though I'm like, uh, it's you follow the lights, right? You follow the light source, and that leads to the main objective. There are so many people online in other Discord servers I'm seeing having this issue, and I tell them that, and they're like, "What?" And I'm like, "Yeah, guys, like you don't need to just run around aimlessly. You don't need a mini map because these are very closed areas."
Yeah. I certainly the area that you were in when you reached out, I was like, yeah, I can understand getting lost in there
I
because,
felt so stupid because I was like, "Oh, I thought that's where I came from."
but particularly because it's so early on, I think that like there are areas like it in the late game, but you kind of get a feel relatively quickly after the point that you reached
Hmm.
out of exactly what the regions are going to be like, and there's no deviation really. But yeah, there is that's a quality of life feature that they've implemented that they don't tutorialize you on, and that seems weird. Um, but once you know it, it's like not life saving, but it's just very efficient for
Hmm.
you. Especially if you're like me replaying the game. Not that I don't know where to go. Like it's like on the back of my hand now. I could do it in my sleep, but
Well,
yeah,
as a seasoned RPG player, my instinct is always I want to go the wrong way and see what's down the
of
other path,
course.
right? Like that's a video game 101. I'm not trying like I want to know I want to go down here because it's usually you can get a Picto, you can get a Chroma to upgrade
Mhm.
stuff. Like this is what I'm looking for. So knowing that information was very helpful.
Yeah,
I will say, if you aren't into managing systems, that
sure.
might get a little tedious. And I've also heard that critique from some people where there might be too many systems for what they're looking for out of an RPG. For me, I personally think that the Picto system is phenomenal, and I love these types of things in games. The fact that you can, for anyone that doesn't know, Pictos are essentially like gear you find accessories. You put them on, they give you some sort of effect. You win 4 battles with them, and then you just have the ability to unlock that Picto for everyone in the party. And that is such a phenomenal quality of life thing where I'm like, I don't need this equipped because especially and like towards the end of the game where I'm like strategizing. I'm like, okay, how many points does this one take? Even though I
Mhm.
think that even though this one's like way higher level, I can get it for 5 and I can keep this one that's like level 1 for 15. Like I'll switch those out or put it on a different character who might have more points and really strategize those things. Like that to me, the build crafting for characters, even though I had a lot of the same Pictos on a lot of characters because they worked well for me in unison. Like a lot of the health ones or health
Yeah,
sharing. I love health sharing because I was like, I'm never dying now. Like you ain't getting me. It really really helpful stuff, and I love that system.
yeah, yeah. No notes really for Pictos and Lumina. Like it's one of those things where for someone again who's not super well versed, and I tackled Metaphor late last year, and like the build crafting is understandable, but it is very easy to get lost in the weeds. I think that on the surface, the Pictos and Lumina can appear a bit sort of intimidating. Once you just experiment with it for like I would say half hour in total
Hmm.
across a few hours of gameplay, I think personally it's actually quite simplistic to understand, even if like the build crafting that comes after the fact is where you can get complex if you want it to be.
Hmm.
So I think it's genius, really.
You know
Yeah,
what I think might be daunting for players is and you could probably change it or sort it differently, but like I never sorted them, so my pictos is just a giant long like vertical line, and you got to like scroll through them. Like I can understand feeling overwhelmed by that, right? Like that is something that you see, but like once you start reading them, there are some where I'm like, I'm never using that. Like, oh,
Yeah.
your parry does more damage, but you can't heal, or like there's just ones in there that are super high risk. And I'm just like, that's not me. That's not my play style. But you
Mhm.
can use those if you're like, well, I'm a parry god, so I'm gonna annihilate everyone. I was more like, oh, I already have counterattack does plus 25%. Now I got counterattack does plus 75. If I combine them, that's an extra 100% damage. And like that's more where I'm looking at. So there are certainly ways to, like I said, build craft, and it's just a really good system that I hope more games implement, because I really hate it when like, oh, this one character only has this one skill and I don't like using them and they're under leveled, and that becomes frustrating.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. I'm trying to think if there's any other general gameplay things before we get into the story, because that's really what I want to talk to you about. This game is narrative. Narrative is the key part of this game, I think. So, I'm gonna say we are now putting spoilers into effect 16 minutes in. So from here on out, if you hear anything, that's your own fault. Finish the game, come back, or stick around if you don't care, you're not going to play it. So let's start off with the prologue, which right off the bat, damn, they hit you with some heavy stuff right out the gate here. You start as Gustav, you're introduced to Mael right away, you're running on the rooftops, you're going to meet someone. They make it very apparent, right, that like, hey, you're kind of going to say goodbye to this person through the dialogue. And I'm
Yeah.
like, okay. So you go meet Sophie, right? Is her
Mhm.
name?
Yep.
Gustav's ex girlfriend, lover, whatever you want to call it. And they're gonna spend the day together because the gommage is coming. And for anyone that doesn't know what the gommage is, it is in this world, once you hit a certain age, you die. And you do that by turning into flower petals, right? So it's going to count down to 33. She's 33, so her time is up. Gustav and the other people in town haven't hit that age, so they're saying goodbye. They have a whole festival, they make a whole day out of it. It's kind of, I'm trying to think the right word. It's it's tragic, but I also do find something beautiful about them having a big town-wide festival to celebrate. And I don't know if
Mhm.
celebrate's the right word, but like to send these people off.
Yeah, it's, there's a strange kind of bittersweet feels like the wrong words, but there is inherently, like, it sounds crazy, but, like, the way in which you Gomage turning into the petals and they them sort of drifting off into the sky, that's, that's Master Oogway from Kung Fu Panda, that is there is a beauty to it, even if it's something quite horrific happening to people. And I think that the way that they use characters interacting, the NPCs that you speak to, if you want, on the path down to the harbor, or just Sophie's like inherent approach and feelings towards the Gamage it's just a part of their life. It's something that they know is coming,
Hmm.
and I think that as a viewer makes you, if you allow it to, makes you sort of look inwards a little bit of, so if I knew for years that when I reach this age, it's like if you knew when and where you were going to die, how would you live your life? What would you
Hmm.
do? How would you approach it? That's a very existential question, and they drop it on you in the first 10
Immediately.
minutes of the game. So, um, yeah, it's powerful stuff.
Eh,
Powerful stuff.
What I love about the prologue is not only that they immediately have you tackling such a difficult question. But when you do talk to the NPCs, when you get more background information and the lore of this world, it's like, okay, they've made it feel like you know what's been happening. You immediately get a sense of, well, Sophie says she never wanted kids. And you can understand that perspective, because why would you want to bring kids into a world that you know, like, what, they're going to have 16 years and then they're just going to die? Like, you completely get the perspective. And there are people, I forget her name, but the woman that is also getting homage and is kind of rude to Sophie
Hmm.
before, she's like, well, you should have had kids younger. And it's like, I kind of get both perspectives of like, hey, you should live your life to the fullest. And if that's something like you innately want to do, you really have to get on it. But also I kind of leaned more with Sophie, where it's like, why would anyone want to exist in this world where it's like you already have an expiration date?
Yeah, there's a futility to it all that is like smothering, really. Like however optimistic you might be about the situation and making the most of it and glass half full, it's like that doesn't change the fact that when the paintress stands up,
Hmm.
you're getting Thanos snapped essentially. It's rough, and I think that they implement, like you say, the different perspectives on it in a way that isn't sort of heavy-handed. It's just sort of very natural that if you seek out the NPC interaction, you get a quite impressively fully formed um, impression of Lumiere's stance as a whole on the Gamage. So I've said it that I think it's one of the strongest just opening hours of a game that I've
Hmm.
seen in a very long time, and that is in large part due to the presentation before and around the Gamage. So
I certainly think that the soundtrack during the Gomage plays a strong like, you get a very strong emotional response. Like, even though these are characters you met 45 minutes ago, right? And you've chatted with them, you've learned a bit about them, you've maybe even learned about like what the expedition is if you do the NPC games where you're like talking to people about the lore, which I thought was a good way to kind of get you up to speed. It's like, when was the first expedition? It's like 67 years ago, right? Like, you kind of get it. You're like, oh, okay. So like expedition 0 was at, like, if you're 100 years, you're counting down. All right. So like the world just starts to make sense and
yeah,
everything you get up to speed really quick. And then you also just get hit with so many emotions that you're like, I'm in. Like, I want to go take down the paintress. I want to put an end to this world, because like the characters seem very likable. They have sort of like, they're sad clearly, but like there are jokes hidden in there. Like, they're drunk and having fun. Like, oh, we ship off tomorrow, right? Like, there's still some sort of, I don't know, dark humor almost, where a lot of
hmm
them are like, yeah, we're gonna go die.
yeah,
We're about to go kill ourselves, so we might as well just go out with a bang.
yeah. Yeah, it's I don't really have any notes. It's just like I think that following, obviously we aren't there, but like following up what happens immediately after the Gamage
Hmm.
with, like you talking about, like music of them getting ready to depart from the harbor. It's They're giving you the full range of vibes, and I think that the one of the strongest things, as someone who's studied like script writing and storytelling, they give you all of this stuff, all of this technically exposition, and they establish the world and give you the overarching like goal. But the indicator of a really strong story is something that hooks you in, but you can't tell where it's going to go. You can have really great stories told to you, but you can kind of, if you're sort of, engaged enough and you're actually thinking it through, you can kind of place out where the steps of the story are going to land.
Hmm.
Um, and I didn't have that at all with this. I just immediately hooked, but had no idea what the journey was going to be. And I think that that's one of the most exciting things about it.
It's funny because like one thing I really would like to know, the people that are early on in the game is like maybe tag us like where do you think the story goes
Mm,
for, and obviously if you're listening to this like you've at least made it past the prologue, but like I want to know where people think it's going to go, because as a JRPG player, I'm sitting here, I'm like, well, there's something more than just like the paintress going on, right? Like I think most people would probably have that inclination. It's games are never, stories are never that straightforward. And if they are,
mm.
it's probably not a good story. So I'm sitting here, I'm like, what could it possibly be? And I don't think anyone will be able to guess what it actually, like where it goes, because I certainly didn't expect that. So let's hop off the prologue. We set out on the expedition. A bunch of us on boats. We're going to the island. We've been we're leaving Lumiere. I'm not French, all right. The world's been fractured, so we gotta go across the ocean, right? And when we get there, we're treated to this visually stunning cutscene of them arriving on the beach, and then this old man appearing through the fog. Everyone's like, what the hell? He's like 60 something years old. Like, why isn't he Gomage? And instead of talking and to him, he just starts cutting people's heads off. And I'm like, yo, what the? Like, I thought we were here to kill a paintress. Now we got humans killing us. Like, it went from 0 to 100 real quick.
Yeah, it turned into like D-Day real quick. Like they dock up, this guy gets decapitated, and then explosions are going off. All the people are scattering, and you get teases of like the Nevrons
Mm-hmm.
in the fog. It's like played like a horror scene, um, which again is a curveball that I just wasn't expecting. Um, talking about that wave of emotions that it's throwing you through. You go from the sadness of the Gamage, and then sort of like the let's go do this when they set off at the harbor, and immediately immediately it goes foobar. Um,
I was
it's
very much expecting like traditional JR, but like we're gonna go there. We're probably gonna get assigned to a unit when that'll be like our party members, and then we'll set off on like a journey. And the fact that they subverted those expectations immediately, where it's like, nah, most of the people you've spent the last hour interacting with are now dead. You'll never see them again, which I'm like, oh wow, okay. Because as someone that went into this game, like I saw the reveal trailer and then I stopped. I didn't watch any of the promotional, and which is how I kind of like to go into games. So
sure.
I was very much taken aback, like, okay, these characters are not the characters. So to see them cutting heads off, you see these giant monsters, and Gustav, who is, he's the main character. You're still playing as him, getting his perspective. He's kind of having a traumatic response to this whole thing. Like he's hiding, and what I love is like when it brings you like to his eyes and like blood dripping all over him. You kind of like get his heart pounding. Like it, it's a traumatic emotional response to like what the hell did we get ourselves into?
Yeah, yeah. Presentationally, they just keep they take swings all the time, and they all connect. I think that it puts us lockstep with Gustav. I think where we just don't know what the hell is going on. I think the way that we expected the game to go is the way that the characters expected the expedition to go.
Mm-hmm.
And it just immediately takes a very, very, very steep left turn. Um, and it puts him in a pretty negative headspace, shall we say. Uh, it's they go there. So
Yes. So you're then Gustav, you're separated from everyone else. You don't even know if anyone else is alive, right? Like you wake up in a field, and that's the game's like this is where you kind of get introduced to the loop of the game, really. Like this is your first area, kind of like, hey, this is what the areas will be like, mainly linear side things. You get more combat introductions, right? Until eventually you meet your first party member, Lune, who comes at a very dark time
mhm.
where Gustav finds more expedition members dead, picks up a gun, and is about to nope out of this expedition, right? And then I was like, so when Lune showed up, I thought she was a hallucination.
Yeah, me too.
I was like, okay, she's not real. He's imagining his friend in this situation so he can keep going. And I'm sitting here thinking, like, is that going to be like the twist towards like as we get further in the game where like he's just been taking everyone down and like eventually he'll realize like none of them are real? No, she's actually real. She's a real person. She shows up, stops him from doing something horrible.
It's because the first line she says is, "If you do that, we both die."
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, so if he shoots himself, she's gone as well because she's in his head.
Mm-hmm.
That's exactly how I read it as well. I'm glad that wasn't what they did.
Same.
But it is a strange first line for a character, because the connotations that you would naturally draw between those two events of him raising the gun to shoot himself and Lune showing up saying, "Don't do that or we're both dead." Clearly she means, if you're dead, there's one less person that I can rely on to keep us all alive.
Yep.
But it's not read that way. So
yeah. So she joins the party. She is the mage character. Gustav is he's a sword wielder, can do some debuff that like his mark ability. I really love marking enemies, and he has that charge ability, right, which can decimate enemies early on if you get that. But Lune is definitely the mage. She puts stains on people, so if you use a fire spell you get a fire stain. If you use a ice spell you get an ice stain. You can build them up, and she has one of my favorite like visual moves in the game with mayhem, where you like get them maxed and then you just burst them all. It's like it's so satisfying every time.
yeah, she's got to admit, she's a bit of a baddie as well.
She is a baddie.
I'm just saying.
No shoes if you're into that as well. Everyone.
Not sure what that's about.
Yeah, I don't know.
But
I saw someone. I don't care remember who it was, but I saw someone that was like, "Yo, Expedition 33 is for the feet community too, guys." And I'm like, what? And then I went and looked. I was like, I didn't know. I beat the whole game and I didn't know she wasn't wearing shoes.
Yeah, not sure what that's about. I mean, obviously she levitates when she's sort of sprinting around.
Yeah, she's like, my feet don't get dirty. So,
but yeah, I'm not really sure. I would understand if there was like some kind of like law reasoning behind it. If they said something somewhere where like the most adept magic casters need to be like, I don't know, some shenanigans, like they need to be touching the earth so that they
like
are in tune with the elements. It's
yeah.
like, but that's not in the game, so I don't know why she does it.
No, it's definitely just because she can levitate. Like,
yeah.
And to be fair, like no one else in the game levitates, just her.
Yeah.
So we keep going. We end up in the flying waters. Gotta say, visually, love this area. I think this is a like you're underwater, but you're not. You're just like walking normally. The enemy, like the soundtrack here, also really, really, it gives you the feeling of being underwater. Like especially we go into combat and you just get that. I'm like, I'm listening to the soundtrack, man. I'm like, bring me back to blowing up the mines on those enemies. But we're making our way through the flying waters. We're looking for Mael, who is kind of like Gustav's adopted sister. He has an actual sister. She's like the mayor of the town, and she thinks the expeditions are a waste of time because not going to win. But Mael came even though she is 16, if I remember correctly.
Yep.
So she has like plenty of years left before she go mages. She's not like everyone else on the expedition. She just hated her life in Lumiere. She's like, I got to get out of here. I want to start living. And she thought that this would be better than being stuck in that town. So she decided to come along. So they're looking for her. And I can't imagine, like, what did you? I brought my teenage sister to die, basically. Yeah, which I like Mael. Probably my favorite character in the game, and we'll talk about her later. But she definitely like, and going in, didn't expect that because I was like, oh, this is just a side character, right?
Yeah.
Again, subverting expectations.
Indeed.
So we find Mael eventually by going through this random door that's in the. We go to a hut, find a door. It brings us to a manor, and I think the manor initially, I'm like running to every door, trying to open everything. I'm like, what's going on here? Like, why can't I go anywhere? Find the only open door. She's in there. She's safe. She says that this disgusting skeleton floating guy founder has been helping her. They call him the curator. So now Mael is back. How'd you feel at initial reactions? Because I thought the curator, I'm like, this guy's got something going on with him.
I I mean, obviously there's a very fantastical game in general, but I liked that there was, again, I guess, going back to the beach scene, an element of sort of supernatural horror to the manor when you first arrive. Everything's sealed and you have no idea where you are or why you're there. And Mael's just sort of sat at this desk in this dark room, and there's this floating thing that doesn't speak but does. She's like, "Oh, this is my friend." And so, what are you talking about, Mael? That doesn't look like a friend. It introduces a lot of questions, but again, like the rest of the game thus far, it's questions that I wasn't ever infuriated by not knowing the answers to.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't even really articulate why none of it infuriated me. I think it's because, particularly, I mean, throughout, I think the game is well paced in general, but in the opening hours, I think that they run you through a click of things very efficiently. They don't linger on anything too long. They don't undercut anything. And this is one of them where you are in the manor for the first time for just the right amount of time, I think. And it doesn't linger on it too much. When you leave the manor, you're sort of just straight back into the journey through flying waters. So that's sort of like, okay, I'll just put that on the back seat. We'll get back there eventually, I'm sure, and we certainly do. So yeah, I love it. I think the curator, like, the name implies something, but you don't really know what it
Mm-hmm.
implies. Like,
As you go further in the game, I'm like, oh, that makes so much sense.
yeah, like, what are you curating? Why are you best buds with Mael? What, all of this. And we, like you say, we get the answers. So
Yeah, I was very much like, okay, we'll probably learn more, so I'm not gonna like stress about it too much right
yeah.
now. Because this is where you get the ability to like upgrade your characters. Like your curators, like I'm gonna hang out at camp now. Come to me, upgrade weapons, upgrade characters for more Picto stuff. Which is great because like I think that the camp and I love the world map. More world maps in JRPGs, please. Like, not only beautiful, but like it just I've always just loved that presentation style. But the camp is actually a super underrated part of the game, I think, because this is
Mm,
where, especially later in the game, like you bond with your allies. And I saw some people being like, oh, the characters are kind of bland. I'm like, well, are you talking to them at camp? Are you checking up on them? Like, if you think the characters in this game are shallow or lack personality and depth, like you didn't spend time with them at the camp. You didn't check in on their scenes. Like they have a whole thing. Like there's one scene in particular. Like we haven't got her yet. Maybe we can wait for that. But like CL, another party member, has some of the best scenes, I think. And I'm like,
yep.
she has so much backstory and like actual relationships with party members that I didn't use her much in combat, but I love her as a character.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I'm 100% with you that if you're saying that the characters lack, three dimensionality, you didn't play the game right, or I guess you didn't engage with the systems that are most definitely there and make them some of the strongest characters I've seen in a while. So
Hmm. Yeah. So we got Mael. We're like, hey, look, we're going to the Gestrel village, which it has been written about by other expeditions. Which we're gonna take a little pause here. I love the fact that they have expedition journals around the map, but like Gustav also has knowledge of them. Like some people have been able to come back from expeditions and like provide them more and more knowledge. Like they've had expeditions that's like, hey, we're going just to put up a bunch of like points that you can use your things to like get to, or we're gonna climb mountains, we're gonna do mapping of the world. Like they had expeditions that were basically just out there not really trying to take the paintress down, but help people that will come after them to take the paintress down. And they use that knowledge. And one of those things is like, hey, there's a village of basically like wooden puppet people that are like homies, right? So we're gonna go there.
Yeah.
Weird. Listen, the Gestrels are weird. They don't talk English really. They talk again like some weird language, but you kind of know what they're saying. And I'm always just like, what's going on here? Why are you a sim? So we get there, and the chief. Did you? I assume you have you beat the chief. Did you fight? You fought the chief?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Is that do you have to do that for the platinum? Probably not, but like,
No, you don't.
okay. Because I tried to throw down with her just like when I was there.
Nope.
Immediately she just whooped my ass so fast. Like I have no chance of beating you. And I just think it's funny that you could fight a lot of like the merchants, and like I always fought all of them. They're very fun because you get like better weapons and stuff. But you get there, she's like, yeah, we'll help you, but like you got to beat our champion in the Coliseum. I'm like, all right, every JRPG's got a Coliseum, Mark. Let's go. Kind of, I don't want to say disappointed, but really short, really easy fights because you're basically fighting geriatric puppets, right? Like, and then you just got to fight the champion who turns out to be a member of your expedition, CL, who I just mentioned. So you fight her, and then she joins the party, and you get her tutorial, and she has maybe the most complicated play style for me to wrap my head around in the game. Like I never really quite got it.
Interesting. Yeah, I think in terms of how they convey the information about CL's moveset, it isn't the best. Like you have to, so she has sun and moon skills. Some skills apply this thing called foretell, which stacks. Other skills consume it to deal additional damage. And if you use a sun and a moon skill, then you enter Twilight, which is sort of like not quite as powerful, but similar to Mael's Virtuose stance, where she just deals like enhanced damage, applies more foretell, and the more foretell that an enemy has applied to it, the more damage they take from CL's skills. I will say like CL is maybe just behind me, Mael in being the most powerful party member.
Sure.
If you build her correctly, she's absolutely absurd. But yeah, she's outside of maybe Monoko. I think she's the toughest to wrap your head around. So
my issue with CL, which discouraged, like I knew she was straight up powerful when I saw her health when you get her is super low and her attack power is really high. I'm like, oh, she's the glass cannon character of this party, which didn't turn out to be the case later in the game because somehow she ended up with the most HP. Like when I beat the game, I was like, I don't know what I have equipped to you right now, but you got like 5k HP, the most there. Like her stats just ballooned, and I have no idea where that came from. I'm like, I'm not even gonna mess with you because like she wasn't in my like for my strategy, she wasn't in my party, but
sure.
She can, again, those pictos and stuff, like you can make her like the health becomes not an issue at all.
Yeah, absolutely.
So she's happy to see everyone. She's like, "Oh my god, you're alive! I thought I was the only one. I was just gonna live here forever." Apparently, she's very funny. She's like a bubbly personality. I don't want to say she doesn't take things seriously, but she always like has like she just has like a perspective that is always like we're gonna look on the bright side, and you learn that more through the conversations at the camp. Like she had a husband who died, but he didn't get gommaged. He just died in an accident. So
Yeah.
like she knows what it's like to lose someone before their time is even up. And she also, I don't know, I assume you've seen most of the scenes, but like, did she have a little relationship with Lune there that kind of like hinted, like I couldn't tell if they were talking about like a romantic or just a friendship, like because she kind of was flirty.
My assumption that I don't think there is anything concrete. If there is, I have no idea how you get it, the scene. But my assumption is that they had, like encounters, shall we say, in the past,
Okay, that's what
but
I got out
nothing
of
ever
it.
serious, like a relationship. It was more just like a bit of fun on the side kind of thing.
Yeah, that's what I got out of it as well. And I was like, okay, like I didn't expect that, but these are like we're building the characters' backstories. That's what I'm really like. I was there for all those scenes. I love that stuff. So, we get her. The Destrals are like, hey, you got to go see Esquier. He's in a cave. He'll help you get to the monolith, which is across the ocean, because he's a big balloon man, and you can swim there. He can also fly eventually, but he can do a lot of things eventually. So you go to Esquier's cave, and he's like jolly. I forget who the voice act. I no the person that does mocap. I think Ben Starr said this. The person that does mocap for Gustav is also the voice actor for Esquier.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Yes. If I remember correctly. So he's very silly. He says a lot of stuff like wee woo. But he's like, I'll help you, but you gotta go get my rock, my favorite rock. It was stolen by my neighbor. And this is probably one of the funniest scenes in the game for me, where Gustav is like, and let me guess, it's like miles
Miles
away,
away. Yeah.
like through a danger, and he's like, no, it's right over there.
Next door. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And they're like, oh, so another funny scene right before this is the guy guarding the path as a gestural, and the guy and they said the password
Get
is
out of my way.
just yell, get out of my way. And then the gestural gets all
Don't be
sad.
so
He's like,
rude.
why are you so mean? I'm sorry. I really am
It
sorry.
was just they told me that was the password.
Yeah, no, it's so funny because it's like this is Charlie Cox as Gustav, which we haven't mentioned if you for some reason didn't know. So Daredevil, but it's literally Matt Murdock. Like the way he talks, I'm like, you are doing Matt Murdock, and that's not a complaint. Like I think he does a phenomenal job as
Yeah.
Gustav, but like the stopping mid sentence thing is like I don't know if they did that intentionally. They're like, hey, we want you to kind of act like you do in Daredevil, but like that is kind of what he does.
Mm. Yeah.
Yeah, so we go fight this. Do you remember the person's name?
Francois.
Francois. Yes, he's a giant boulder that can't move, basically. And this was actually like probably my first. I don't want to say challenge of the
Mm.
game, but like he could hurt you, and I was like, oh wow, I didn't expect you to be so powerful because like you can't move. I thought it was like a joke battle at
Yeah.
first.
Yeah.
So you beat him, and then he goes, I don't even have your stupid rock. Like, oh my god, of course. Turns out the rock is in a place miles away, dangerous. And we're gonna go there because SK needs his rock to help us out. So we go to the Stone Wave Cliffs. And this is where horrible things happen. So you get SK's rock, and you beat the boss, and you're like, all right, we're gonna go to the monolith now. SK is like, everyone hop on. So Lune and Ciel jump down, and Mael and Gustav are having a scene because Gustav likes to chuck rocks at the monolith. It's like a thing he does to relax. He's like, we're getting closer and closer. So they're like chucking rocks, and then that old man shows up and literally just blasts Gustav through the heart. And I immediately I'm like, fuck, I'm gonna fucking kill you. Cause I loved Gustav at this point. I was like, wait, you telling me Charlie Cox is about to leave the game? Like, we don't get Charlie Cox the entire game, which again, subverting my expectations. They do a great job of this. Mael is like, she can't believe her eyes. Like, she's been trapped in some magical bubble, right? She can't help. So Gustav, you get into a one-on-one fight with this old man, and you can't do shit to him. It's one of those fights where I'm like, oh, I just have to lose.
Yeah. Rough, man. It's rough.
Yeah. What? So Gustav dies. There. And the old man is about to. I don't know if he's gonna attack Mael, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Sort of
Okay.
strike her down,
Yeah.
which seems brutal, but again, you kind of contextually understand it a bit better later on.
Yeah, well, and one thing we haven't talked about, which we can touch on, is leading up to here at camp. Mael has been having nightmares the
Mm.
entire time of this old man, of this kind of disfigured masked girl, and he's kind of like, "Take your friends, leave, like don't come back," like warning her. So when he shows up here and does this, he's like, "I warned you, like you should have left." And right before he strikes her down, this other character shows up who's also an older gentleman to save her. And this is where Ben Starr's character comes in. His name is Verso, which can I just say, worst character name in the game.
It's not. It's not great.
I really don't like. I'm like all the other characters. I'm like, you did a really good job. I think Verso is an awful name. But he's here, and he's like, I'm gonna hold him off because he seems to be quite strong. Everyone escapes, right? And now you get into Act 2 where you're no longer Gustav, he's dead, and you are Verso now.
Yeah.
So how'd you feel about Gustav kicking the bucket?
I mean, it's weird. Like, I guess in some ways, I could kind of tell that something was going to happen. Um, like maybe it was just the fact that I've seen so many, films and like just the way that they were setting up the scene of Gustav and Mael talking. I was like,
Mm-hmm.
they didn't immediately jump down with the others. They're sticking around. Just like this is the setup for something bad to
Yep.
happen.
Mm-hmm.
Wasn't necessarily expecting Gustav to straight up die. I did learn after the fact that in the sort of reviewer's guide that covers like the embargo and stuff that we get for coverage, because I was playing this game a number of weeks prior to release, it said to not include in the coverage anything about Gustav's death. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm really glad I didn't read that
Read that, yeah.
until I got further into the game. Yeah, I think it's like I said to you when you reacted to it. I think you just said like, "I've just finished Act 1, full stop," and I was like, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
I think it's one of the best rug pulls that I've seen in a long time. There have certainly been games that have subverted expectations, but when you have like a big name actor in the lead role and they're super compelling and they seem quite essential to like character dynamics in terms
Mm-hmm.
of Mael's relationship with him seems like something that would normally grow, and you'd find things out about their families and what brought them together, and it's like, nope, they're just going to rip that away from you pretty unceremoniously. Gustav does have like a hero moment, I guess, but it is sort of like it's devastating to see him try and it to just not be. It doesn't do anything. You can damage Renoir, but it doesn't actually hurt him.
Mm-hmm.
And he strikes him down like it's nothing. It's brutal.
Yeah. So I definitely I was like, oh, something bad's about to happen, as you were saying with these scenes. And whenever I get into that mode, I'm like sensing something's gonna happen. And this happens a lot when I'm watching TV with my fiance, where I'm like, something bad's about to happen. She goes, how do you know? I'm like,
The telegraphing
just the
stuff.
way they're right, like the way that we were watching one show where they introduced the character in a flashback, and then we kind of didn't see them again. I was like, oh, that character's gonna show up at the end of the episode. She's like, how could you possibly know that? I'm like, well, why would they introduce him in a flashback otherwise? Like, they're like, well, they died in a flashback. I'm like, nah, he's not dead. Like, that's gonna be the cliffhanger, right? Like, that's how you write things like that. And I'm like, it just made sense to me that something bad was gonna happen. I was hoping it wasn't going to be Gustav dying,
Mm,
and then it was. And part of my initial reaction was, I hope they didn't do this just because Charlie Cox costs a lot of money. But part of
sure.
me is also like, after I beat the game, like, okay, it wouldn't really have made sense if like
Yeah.
that was I think that was always going to be the case. Like they probably had the story and then casted him instead of like, hey, it's probably a shorter role, so it's fine. But um, yeah, heartbreaking. That was my first like I'm gonna kill them all moment, like Ellie from The Last of Us, where I'm like I'm gonna kill them all. Everyone's gonna die. I'm going Mael because I immediately like Mael's she's the one I've been running around with, like the character that I've already liked the most. So to see her lose her brother figure, be so devastated because she had that like holding him, like crying, like blood ever, like kind of shell shocked going on, and I'm like I feel for her right now. Like, this is horrible. This is not what she expected to happen.
Yeah. Again, it's like the idea of putting you lockstep with the characters. It's how you emotionally ingratiate a character or an audience with a character, is that you make them feel the same feelings that they're experiencing in the moment. So you bring up Ellie is like perfect, right? That's
Mm-hmm.
another great example of it. Now, obviously, Last of Us Part Two, whether that worked for you overall for the entire game, subjective, but I think that there's no denying that with what happens in Last of Us, in the same way that what happens here, with Gustav on the beach feeling, fear when the expedition's decimated, or here when Gustav dies and feeling the anger and confusion and sadness of Mael, it makes you connect with the character that much more. And I think it's masterfully done, in my opinion.
Yeah. One thing I'll say is that like I clearly like I think the narrative of this game is really strong. And a part of that is because like I get vibes of things like The Last of Us. I get vibes of things like a Plague Tale, both of them being
Mm,
French developers, obviously, but like there are those sort of strong narrative, more linear style. Like they clearly encompass that into this, but then they just changed everything around. Like, hey, we're not doing a third person action adventure game. It's going to be a JRPG,
yeah.
which is great because like a lot of the times JRPGs, well, I think they can have phenomenal stories. I don't think narratively and like conveying themes and like the powerful emotions that something like a Plague Tale for me has, that often isn't the case. Like it is very much like power of friendship is often
Hmm.
a big trope. Like, and you don't see that in this game. Like there aren't really tropey JRPG things going on.
Yeah.
So you're Verso now. You go back to camp. Everyone's sad. Gustav's dead. You get introduced to this persona-esque bonding mechanic, which I was like, okay, because I looked at the achievements, some of them ahead of time, so I knew there was some sort of bonding thing. But I was like, why can't I bond as Gu? Like I'm trying to talk to everyone. Why does my bond go up? So Verso is the one with the bonds because it makes sense too. Because like he doesn't know these people, they don't know him. The bonds are to get to know them, to integrate him into Expedition 33. Um, and immediately, like not immediately, but like one of my favorite scenes is him and CL, where CL just is like, hey, you want to go have sex, basically. And I'm like, you can turn her down, but I was like, nah, let's do it. Like, let's go
Why
over.
not?
So yeah, why
Yeah.
not? Why not? So sounds like a good time. So you get those types of things, but obviously he has different relationships with everyone. Um, I forget if it happens. Does Verso tell them right now who the old man is and who like not fully,
Yeah,
clearly.
yeah, he does. Yeah.
Okay. So he explains that like, oh, that's Renoir. He him and me were part of Expedition Zero,
Zero, yeah.
Zero, and we just stopped aging. Like we're immortal now. Like we stopped aging. I've helped other expeditions out, but we need to stop him. Yada yada yada. Basically, I don't think we get a lot of like he gives you the gist, but there's a lot more that will be uncovered.
Hmm. Yeah, again, it's giving you just enough to hook you in and add new dimensions to the story, without revealing everything. Because again, even at this stage, going back to my previous point, when you're done with like act 1 of a 3-act story, you typically know where things are heading at this point. Certainly at this point, even if you
Nah.
can't hook onto something in the beginning, you're like, okay, well, we're about a third of the way through, so I can see where this is probably going to end up. And like, sure, you might deduce, okay, we go and fight the paintress, or we might have to fight Renoir at one point, but like beyond that, you really still have no clue where this is heading. So I love it.
Yeah, he's like, okay, we're gonna need a little more firepower to fight the battles ahead. Let's go get my oldest friend Minoko. He's over at Minoko Station. You go through the Forgotten Battlefield to get there. You arrive at Minoko Station. It's kind of like an ice. It's a frozen train station essentially. You recruit Minoko after fighting him, and I like Minoko as a character. I don't like his skill tree or having him in the party, because having to collect enemies' feats to unlock like his place, like I don't want to do that. Like that's not for me. I'm sorry. Like that just every time I had to use him in combat, I was like, oh, this isn't good. This ain't gonna be fun.
Yeah, he's he
Unique.
definitely has very good use cases, but he is, at least from our experimentation, best as a like full support character rather than being. He's got very strong skills that can deal a lot of damage, no doubt, but he primarily sets things up for other characters, which again, if your play style is more like I want to be on the offensive and see lots of big numbers, technically Minoko can help you achieve that, but he's not going to do it himself.
Yeah.
But like you say, like his character, I think is great. Having a gestural on the team is funny, and I
Him
think
and Verso's relationship is they're always just trying to like make fun of each other.
the biggest bromance in town.
Yes.
Yeah, he's great. I agree though. Even having unlocked all of the skills for Minoko, it does seem like there's a bit of a missed opportunity to. I guess maybe you could combine a few things that make him a more like actual DPS character, but there should have probably, in my opinion, been like 2, 3, 4 more skills that you could acquire that actually really are maybe harder to get, but allow him to do a lot of heavy damage. But you got other party members to do that, so I guess you need somebody that is primarily focused on support, but that's inherently less fun. So.
And his son is the gestural that Mael has been hanging out with
Little
since we met
Noko.
her. Yeah. R.I.P. He's not really dead, right? Like that's what well,
Well,
didn't
that's
they
the
say
thing. Like
that?
gestrals, like reincarnate. Like
Yeah.
you can resurrect them essentially by taking them to the sacred river. But my assumption, and they kind of allude to it, is that it's kind of like a Groot situation. Where like the Groot from the first Guardians of the Galaxy film, he's dead, like he's dead, and technically, Baby Groot is still Groot, but it's a
Not that
different
Groot.
Groot.
Yeah.
I think like Noko, because mild spoilers, I guess there is a way to bring Noko back, but like it's very clear that he isn't the same sort of bubbly Noko. So like he's Noko maybe in name only, but which in and of itself is kind of interesting. That again with the wider context and themes of the game overall, the idea that within this world there is a race of beings that can in and of themselves reincarnate when they die, but something is lost in that process. It's interesting.
Yeah, I just always when they were like, "Oh, we can bring them back," I'm like, "Oh, this is weird puppet people magic or something." Like, I think they're so weird. Like they're funny. They're just so weird to me.
You got to put them in jars when they reincarnate as
Yeah,
well.
it's
It's
okay.
like,
That's a
why
bit
are we putting
much.
them in
Yeah,
jars?
that's a
I
bit
don't
much.
know.
So we get Minoko, and then we're devising a plan to take down the paintress. Versal's like, we gotta take out her heart first, right? And the heart is in Old Lumiere. So that's our next location. We go there, it's blocked off. So Minoko's like, I got this. I'll transform into a giant monster and break the building. And then you get separated. So it's Ciel, Minoko, Lune in one party, and then Mael and Averso at another party. You play as Lune and them first as you go through the you go through Old Lumiere. You uncover like a journal that tells you a little bit more about Verso and Renoir. Turns out that's his daddy, uh, which immediately Lune gets concerned, and Minoko's like, "Don't worry, he won't hurt my like. It's all good. Like I know him." And I gotta say, I found having just Verso and Mael at this part to be quite difficult because I was like, my party is not set up for just these two characters. So fighting enemies was a pain in the butt at that point for me.
Yeah, it's interesting. The game does that a few times where it forces you into things. It's obviously not a problem when it's the Gustav versus Renoir, where it's like you're meant to lose. It's a 1v1, you can't do much. But
Mm-hmm.
if you have built your characters a certain way, there is a chance that a few encounters are like not unwinnable, but are gonna like really screw you over inherently because you don't have the setup. You know, if you don't have a skill equipped, you can obviously switch skills out if you die and reset. But like, let's say you don't have a skill on Mael that applies burn to someone, so you can't use Swift Stride to switch to Virtuose. Like, then you're at an inherent disadvantage. So, not that big of a gripe, but I think that maybe there could have been a little bit of fine tuning. Um, but again, you like I never found an encounter that was like really unwinnable. It just was maybe a little bit more of a slog, took a few more turns, that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no. So like the upcoming boss fight is really the first time I felt challenged during a boss. Like every other time, I was like, okay, I must be keeping my levels up. I must be doing like well. Once you like figuring out parries, because I'm getting through boss fights easier. Some of the optional super bosses might be kicking my teeth in, even though I had beat a few, but yeah, some of those enemies with just two were really frustrating me. And can I say, I never beat a mime in this game. The mimes,
Interesting.
I mean, I'm sure I can, like if I went back now and like tried to, but like every time I found one first try, I was like, no, I got no chance.
Interesting.
Yeah, I don't know, for some reason the mimes were just like my kryptonite
But in terms of not being able
to like read their moves and like stuff like that.
interesting,
I
interesting.
was like, I feel so stupid because everyone's like, I beat 3 mimes so far. I was like, I've beaten like some bull BS super boss, and I can't take down this stupid mime.
Yeah, I think I cleared out every mime as I got to them. I mean, obviously, it's all about breaking the mime first, but I
I
guess,
I think that's might be where I struggle because my characters weren't set up to break things.
yeah. And that's another example, right? Where like technically that isn't unwinnable because you can still do chip damage, but
Mm-hmm.
you are doing like minute damage if you don't break the mime. So
Exactly.
yeah.
Okay, back to old Lumiere. Mael and Versa. Well, Versa disappears after a fight, and Mael's alone. She finds this giant manor, which maybe that's the manor you've already been in. I don't know. She goes up to it, and then the disfigured girl with the mask opens the door. And then you hear Verso come out of nowhere, like, I knew you'd open the door for her, like try to get in, right? And Renoir shows up, and then Lune and her party show up, and you get the whole exposition of like, yes, that's my dad, that's not my sister, like we were a family. Sorry, I lied to you. Lune's always super pissed about
Hmm.
secrets, but like, and that'll come up later, but like, she's not very happy with Verso right now.
No, no.
But Verso's like, yeah, ignore that right now. We got to take out Renoir. He's going to try to kill all of you at the moment. And this boss fight, I was like, this is annoying as shit. I was very again the first boss fight that I found really difficult in this game because his moves had like I feel like this is the point where you told me it gets like Sekiro like with a bunch of and then this is where I was really feeling it where I'm like, can you just slow down? I can't hit the parry button fast enough.
Yeah, it like not only do attacks pretty much across the board speed up from this point going forwards, but particularly with Renoir and other enemies in the game, like the chroma attacks in particular, not the gradient ones
Mm-hmm.
because they slow down, those are easy, but the chroma attacks where it's like sending out waves of chroma or
Yep.
whatever. Not only are they super fast, they are also really hard to. They don't
Time.
telegraph well when
Yep.
they connect. Um, Not to the point where it's like super frustrating, but it's just like it is an onslaught where there is a difficulty spike there, I think, where it will skill check a number of people, I think.
Yeah,
Um,
I would usually get hit by the first wave at
and
least,
then
and
you, yeah,
then
pick it up
maybe I'd
after
get
that.
it. But like that can do a lot of damage, and now I'm like, oh, I gotta spend my next turn healing because like I don't have my good healing pictos yet at this point in the game. So it did become frustrating where I was like, that was the first one I got wiped on, and then I went back in, and I was like, okay, now I have a new strategy. Let's figure this out.
Hmm.
So you take him. Well, you win the boss fight. I shouldn't say you take him down. You win the boss fight, uh, and then I'm trying to remember what exactly happens. I know the manor disappears,
Yeah,
and
because um, they're trying to get the heart of the paintress,
yes,
and Renoir's like, "No, you don't," and he teleports the both the heart and the manor away.
hmm
Um,
and
so
Versal's
it's
really upset about it.
yeah, I guess that's understandable. You know, I'll let him off the hook. It's
He's
fair enough.
it's like this was our only chance. So they go back to camp. Versal's pretty much like, well, you're all done for. I guess it's over. Um, and Lune won't accept that. She's like, "What about the Axians?" And I'm like, "What? What the hell is that? What's an Axon?" And then apparently they're like, Versa's like, "There's three of them in the world, and one is you can't get to, and the other two will kill us." So like suicide mission. Lune's like, "Let's do it anyway."
We're
I'm like,
dead
all
either
right.
way, so
Yeah,
you
yeah,
know.
exactly. So they all convinced, they set off. You and at this point you have the option. You can go to either one location first. They do tell you like, hey, this one's probably gonna be easier, so maybe go here first. But if you want a challenge, go to the other one. I went to Visages first, which I think is the reasonable
Yeah,
route.
yeah.
And this is a creepy island with just like masks and faces everywhere. Um, you get introduced to someone that's like, oh, the accident awaits you down this path, but like here's some other paths that maybe you want to go down first because maybe this will weaken the boss, right? Like, and I don't know if you in any of your time playing, have you tried can you just go straight up fight him without
You
doing
can.
is he super way harder or no?
It's not that bad. It just they have a few more masks that they can switch between that perform different attacks,
Gotcha.
but none that are like they're not crazy devastating attacks. They're just the same as the other ones.
Gotcha. Because
No more damaging. So
you know what it reminded me of, and you'll get this. And I won't spoil what happened, but like the final boss of Metaphor, where it's like, hey, maybe
yep.
you should go take out these enemies in this final dungeon. I'm
Hmm.
like, first time I showed up to the final boss, I was like, I'm not doing that, and I just went and proceeded to get absolutely destroyed. Yeah, so that's kind of like this. I liked this area a lot. I liked the enemies in this area. I thought they were fun to fight, even if some of them were they hit harder.
Hmm.
And then you had like a mini boss fight at the end of each path, the three paths, corresponding to like the mask in the area, the emotion that you were in, right? I found two out of the three masks to be very easy
Hmm.
fights, especially the one that floats in the air where I'm like just loading him full of bullets and his health is wait. I'm like, why was this even a boss fight? This guy was so easy. The first one that I went down though, I was like, this guy is rough. Like, oh my
Mm.
god, can you chill for a second, bro?
Yeah, it does seem a little bit unbalanced, I guess. Artificially inflated difficulty, it seems. I don't know why else they wouldn't have better balanced the difficulty across the three. Yeah, I because I can't even remember which one of the three masks it was.
It was the whatever the top option was, because I think the
Yeah,
last one's anger, and then I want to say the middle one is sadness.
yeah. So it's joy then.
Yeah, I think joy.
Yeah. So like, if it was anger, I could maybe understand. You know,
Anger went down super easy
but
though.
that's what I mean. It's like you would think that would be a tough one because it's angry, but
Yeah.
no.
So you go fight this boss, which again, I liked this boss. I didn't have much difficulty. My difficulty came when I beat the boss and then I didn't get a level up screen. I go off. We're doing freaking second phases now.
Here we go.
And then you drop down, and it turns out that dude that told you about the past is the actual boss, and he's like powering up now. I forget what he was. What's his name? He has an official name.
The
The
mask keeper.
Mask Keeper, yes. I thought he was much more difficult because
Hmm.
he has a lot of those fast multi-hit moves.
Yeah.
Uh, I think I barely. I think I had. I think I beat him with just CL alive.
Yeah.
So I was like,
Scrape by.
yeah, I was like, this is good. No one else needs experience, just you.
Hmm.
Which is one of my critiques that I think I don't like when party members not in the party don't get the same amount of experience, and I don't like when you die you don't get experience. I don't like that.
Yeah. Especially because there are fights later in the game where you're going to be not dependent on, but you're going to have to use your party members that are in reserve, and more often than not, the ones that you have in reserve are the ones that are going to be less leveled
Mm-hmm.
because they're not an active party member. So you're then immediately at a disadvantage when the reserve members come in, which is annoying, I guess. I think that is, if I had to levy a critique against the game, that probably would be one of them.
Yep.
Again, it was never a hurdle enough that it stopped anything, but one of those things where it seemingly would be an easy thing to implement. I'm not really sure if there was a design decision.
It's an old school JRPG thing where a lot of games still do this to this day. A lot of them have taken it out, but it's not uncommon for games in
Right.
this genre to not do that.
Fair.
So you beat them. Lune steals, I don't know, his soul or something. I don't know. I'm not quite whatever they call it, the chroma. I'm
Mhm.
not quite sure what they take from. Because the curator is going to make some crazy good weapon that'll let you get to the paintress without taking out the heart. So next you go to Serene, which might be one of my favorite visual areas in the
Mhm.
game. I think it's quite beautiful here. All the Nevrons like dancing in the air. I think this might also be the easiest area in the game from my perspective because I was like, I have at this point I'm like get AP for starting my turn for doing like basic things, right? So like I'm building up very easy my action points, and these enemies are all flying, so you got to shoot them, and I'm just like headshot, like they're going down real quick. So like I didn't find much difficulty in the base enemies in this game or this area at all. What I will say is like there's two there's two mini bosses. One of them they say is optional. Is he actually optional?
Yes.
Oh, great. And does that make the person harder?
If you leave them alive, yes.
All right, all right. Yeah, because it's some way like working at like a sewing machine, like a giant. It's like, oh, we can fight him. Might help us later on. I fought that person. I was like, you're not very good. Like you're like once I learned the parry timing for him summoning those like worms or whatever, I was like, you're really not all that. So I got through that pretty easily. And then you actually fight the worms later.
Mhm.
I thought they were maybe the easiest like boss in the game. I was like, why do you make me do that? Like you guys suck. genuinely, like I don't know what it was. Like I don't know if I like the game clicked for me finally, but like I thought this area was very easy until you get to the boss. And I should have known. Like I picked up a picto that was like anti-charm. The enemies like would try to charm you. So I was like, I'm sitting there in the back of my mind and was like, I don't really want to put that picto on. I hope the boss doesn't have like this charm ability. I go in there, she immediately charms everyone. Versal starts hacking my party to death. And I lose very quickly. I'm like, guess I'm gonna warp back and respec my pictos to get everyone this anti-charm ability.
Yeah. Yep. I think that's a cool thing as well about the Pictos, that a fair amount of the time you'll get a Picto relating to an ability or something after you defeated an enemy with it. But I like that there are like isolated examples throughout the game where they can give you a Picto and it's kind of like a prelude. And again, like I was exactly the same as you, where I was like, this probably has some use cases, but like
Yeah.
the stats on it aren't great, and it
Mm-hmm.
doesn't really. It's definitely not as good as the Pictos I have now. Do I want to waste Lumina on this? Like, nah, that'll be fine. Oh,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah. So once you once you reaccount for that, I still thought the boss fight was actually quite difficult,
Mhm.
especially when she does the grand ballet, and I'm like, oh man, the timing on this I am not getting at all. But in terms of like, she tries to charm you a lot of her moves, like, and she just keep trying it, and I just stand there and laugh at her. I'm like, you're stupid. You can't do nothing to me right now. So it makes it infinitely easier
Yeah.
once you know that. And that's really like, I'm sure like some of the super secret bosses maybe you have to respec for, but like in terms of me going back and like looking and like redoing stuff, this is really the only one I felt like if I don't do this, there's no way I'm getting through it.
Yeah. Agreed.
So again, we take we take this person's soul. We go back to the curator who makes the barrier breaker sword for Mael. And now we're like, hey, we can get to the monolith now. Let's go. Let's go defeat the paintress. I'm like, oh wow, we're going. Like, who needs the heart? Like, we found a way. So you go to the monolith, you break through the barrier. The paintress is sitting there, and then you're like, let's kill her. I guess it's happening. You start the fight, and then I was like, why can't I hurt her? I thought I was doing
Oh
something
no,
wrong. Yeah, I was like, oh shit. Well, like, I was
not
like,
again.
well, here's the thing, like, cause I was looking at the achievements, like, all right, next one up is defeat the paintress.
Mm,
Like, so clearly I'm at the paintress boss fight, and then I couldn't hurt her, and I was like, how much longer, like, what steps are is going to happen now? Like, I feel like I just did a bunch. I feel like I deserve a boss fight. That's not the real paintress. That's like some giant doll. The real paintress shows up, looks a lot like the curator, I'm just gonna say. Makes a portal, and then you go through this portal and you're inside the monolith. And I I don't know if you'll understand this, but I immediately got worried making my way through the monolith because I was like, every little area is a throwback to the areas we've already been through. And I was like, I swear to God, if they have a boss rush before this fucking paintress, I'm a look, because that is also a very common JRPG thing where it's like, hey, remember that boss you fought in chapter one? Now he's just a regular enemy now. So this
right.
dungeon's gonna take 5 hours because you got to fight all the bosses again, or miniature versions of them as regular enemies. Luckily, not the case. Just
Yeah.
like, oh hey, we're in the water area. You get the enemies, you get the similar ones. I was like, okay, I'm good with that. That's fine with me. But visually, very cool that like they combined all the areas together.
Yeah. Agreed. I think it sort of plays into the idea that this might be like the culmination of the game, because it is the overarching goal to go and kill the paintress.
Mm-hmm.
So it does feel like the way that the zone is staged, and as you're making your way through it, it does, like, you're by default kind of like climbing, and this, like, okay, we're ascending to this final challenge, and we're
Yep.
sort of, like you say, going through all the places that we've been before and getting a bit more story. And it's not where the story ends.
No, it isn't. So on your way up there, you have to fight Renoir again, and Renoir the whole time is kind of speaking in riddles that Verso understands. Everyone else is like, "What are you talking about?" He's like, "You're destroying our family." he's like, "Do we not mean anything?" And Verso's like, "Nah, like we can't keep doing this," basically. So like you kind of get the feeling that like, okay, if we beat the paintress, like maybe they'll die, but like everyone else will be safe. Like that's kind of the feeling I was getting. Like clearly defeating the paintress is somehow tied to Renoir and his family staying or dying or staying alive, vice versa. Um, Again, pretty similar boss fight
Mhm.
to the first one. I found it more manageable this time because, again, you knew what to expect. I'd fought him at this point like a few times, so really no issues there for me. You beat Renoir, and then you're like, all right, we're going to take down the paintress, and the paintress immediately is like calling Mael the wrong name, like, oh, Alicia. And then she's very happy to see Verso. And at that point, I had kind of, I'm like, I think the paintress is part of his family. Like I had
Mhm.
kind of figured it out. Well, figured that part out. So you fight her because she's like, you're not my Alicia, you're not my Verso. So you fight her, and she dies. like shit. Okay, we won. Everyone's happy. We plant a flag. We're like Expedition 33. We did it. The number disappears off the monolith. We're like, let's go back. Let's celebrate. Let's go to Lumiere. How did you find the paintress fight? Because again, I I had final boss fight vibes leading
Mhm.
up to it. When I was fighting her, I was like, there's no way you're the final boss because I don't think this is hard enough for the final boss.
Yeah, I mean, it when it escalated up towards the end of the fight, where the giant
Yep.
version of the paintress like
Hmm.
rips open the reality, it's like, okay, this is giving more final
Yeah, it was
vibes, but
visually awesome.
it's not it's not that tough. There are a few like when she rips it open and those white projectiles come down, the timing on that can be a little bit difficult,
Hmm.
and the chroma waves and stuff. But outside of that, you might get hit once, but like you say, you get hit the first time and then you immediately pick up the timing to parry for the rest of them. I was like, okay, well, presentationally, this isn't disappointing, but in terms of gameplay, it might be a little bit of a letdown if this is the end.
Hmm.
Um, but I felt like the impressiveness of the visuals overrode any sort of underwhelming feeling I had in the moment.
Yeah.
So,
It was again visually stunning. Boss fight was good, fair. I thought. We beat her. Everyone's excited. We go back to Lumiere. And again, looking at the achievement list, I saw one that said "Return to Lumiere after you beat the paintress," and I was like, maybe the game's actually over. Because I'm like, we're going back. Like, if this pops, like the only one after that is like reach the end of the game. I'm like, maybe that is the end. Maybe like the whole thing, maybe they subverted my expectations by actually just straight up being like, nah, the beat the paintress, save the world. That's not what happened at all. You go back, everyone's celebrating. Verso pulls out a letter. Turns out the paintress was not evil. The paintress was is Verso's mom, who who was warning everyone that, hey, my husband Renoir is going to Thanos snap you once you get to this age. So that she was writing a number of people to warn them. And then they mentioned how, like, oh, if the letter's like, oh, if you defeat the paintress, like everyone's going to die. And then the whole town, everyone gets Thanos snapped, right? Including your party members, Mael. And I was like, and I send you a gift at this point. I'm like, oh no. I'm like, what
wait,
did we do?
no.
Yeah, I'm like, what did we do? Because like it's very good because like Versal's just reading this letter. You think it's like a note, and then they start telling you the truth, and I'm like, oh,
Oh,
I didn't think that. Uh Yeah, y'all get Thanos snapped. How are you? What was your reaction to that?
So I almost felt like I had messed up somehow.
You got a
Where,
bad ending.
yeah, like something had gone wrong. Because again, I saw that like the trophies as well. It was like return to Lumiere, end the game or whatever. And I was looking at the progress tracker on PS5 and it said like 66%. So I was like, well, this feels weird that there would be like technically 33% left. Ironic.
Hmm.
And we'd be at the end of the game. I guess maybe it's accounting for like post game or end game stuff. Maybe it's like 100% tracking. I don't know. And then the shockwave came in and hit Lumiere, and I was like, huh. And then I can't remember who gamaged first, but I was pretty much exactly the same as you, where I was like, no, 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 no. I think it might have been CL because
Yeah, I'm pretty
I was
sure it
like,
is CL.
oh, that's so annoying. And then Lune started going. I was like, no, I
Yeah.
cannot. I will not abide this. Will not allow it. And I thought, oh Christ, so maybe it is. Maybe it's just Mael and Verso going forwards.
Yep, that's
You
what I
know.
thought as well.
And
And
then
then Mael.
obviously Mael went. I was like, right. So something else is going on here that I'm not quite privy to yet. And we start obviously picking up answers, but again, it's like the Gustav rug pull, but it's just subverting expectations. Like going back to Lumiere, even without the contextual information of the 66% and the trophy lists or whatever, I kind of got the inkling that it shouldn't be this easy.
Hmm.
Easy, so the game probably shouldn't be over. Like I'd be like, okay, if it ends now, fine, I guess, but that's a bit lackluster.
Well,
Um,
imagine me seeing everyone say it's game of the year, and I'm
yeah, a
like,
bit
Act
rushed.
One, like really high, and then Act Two, I'm thinking it's ending. And I'm like, are are they gonna like? Does everyone think this is a game of the year because they do a rug pull and kill everyone, and like it's like a miserable, like you're supposed to feel emotionally distraught, and like because it is one of those things. Like I had a very emotional reaction. Like I had spent however long with these characters. I grew to be invested in a lot of them, and I thought like, okay, we stopped the main bad guy. I'm sure there's something else because always is in a JRP. The main bad guy is never really the main bad guy, but I didn't expect it to have such ramifications that would kill all of us.
Yeah. Um, and especially because, you know, mild spoilers up to this point,
Well, we're full
we are
spoilers.
assuming that the gommage is like a completely irreversible thing.
Hmm.
So it's not like, they got taken somewhere or they got afflicted with something. It's like, no, they're just gone. And I'm like, Jesus Christ. I again, I don't know where it's going. This far into the game, I still don't know where things are going. And that's an incredibly hard thing to pull off and not have the player frustrated.
It it's funny that we both thought Verso and Mael were going to like be the two because clearly, like at this point in the game, something's up with Mael. Like Renoir and everyone keeps mentioning her. The paintress was calling her the wrong name. After you beat Renoir, the curator shows up and like him and Mael like gomage Renoir, and it's like, how'd you do that? So like clearly, there's something special about her, which if you just watch trailers and marketing material, like never would have guessed that Mael becomes like the central figure of this game. And that's again something I really love that you couldn't tell that was kept under wraps. But then when she gomage, I was like, oh God, I don't know what's going on. And then we get to another prologue where I was like, "Oh, you're having a prologue after Act Two. That's interesting." You wake up in the manor, and you're Mael, but you're not Mael. You are the girl with the burned face. Alicia is her name, and it turns out, and this is I think probably why no one's going to be able to guess what this game is actually about, because like how could you possibly know this? Like the world that you've been playing in is not real. It's a painting that Verso drew, he painted before he died in a fire saving his sister Alicia. So the Verso you've been playing as is like a remnant of his soul, and the rest of Verso's family are paintresses that are able to enter paintings and worlds and live in them. So his mom, Aline, went in there. She's the paintress, and she wanted to keep his world alive. Like she she she's not handling grief very well. Okay, she wanted to keep
She
the
wants to
world
spend
alive.
time with her son. You know.
Yes, she wants to spend time with her son, Verso, even though it's not actually Verso. She's been in there quite a while, maybe years and years, judging by the expeditions.
Yeah.
Her husband, Renoir, went in to get her, and Renoir is actually the curator. And the Renoir you've been fighting is the warped evil version that Aline painted to depict her husband, who they're kind of like having a fight to like control the painting because he wants her out. She doesn't want to leave. You have another sister, Clea, who is like, Mael, I know you can't talk because you got burned all in this fire. You got to go into the painting. You got to basically live in there and then grow up and get mom out of it. We're going to hide the painting so when she gets out, she won't be able to find it again. So you go in and then you lose all your memories and you live your life as Mael. And that's essentially brings us to the start of the game, right? You live 16 years as Mael and go off on this expedition, but you didn't know any of that backstory, and now it recontextualizes the entirety of the game and the world. So all your friends, Lune, Ciel, none of them are real. And that was quite hard for me to take.
Yeah. I mean, it kind of leans into the whole "it was all a dream," trope, which is hated by pretty much everyone.
Mm-hmm.
And again, I can't quite articulate it, but I think that it's presented in such a way that it at least for me didn't become infuriating. There was like that sort of heart wrenching sort of sinking feeling for a bit where I was like, that does kind of suck that these characters are, I mean, obviously fictional because they're in a game, but like
Mm-hmm.
in the world of the game, they aren't real either, technically. But I think that the game then, over the rest of the playtime, kind of presents that argument of, well, who's to say they aren't real?
I was just gonna bring that up. I think there's a meta narrative about creativity and what is reality to creators.
Yeah, and living through art, right?
Yes, yeah, and I think that's really well done, especially as we'll talk about when we get to the end of the game.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's certainly hitting you with a lot of reveals and twists in this section. I think it's interesting as well that Clear is shown to be the one who created the Nevrons,
Mm-hmm.
and the Nevrons, like throughout the early game, especially when you first reach the continent when Gustav's alive, they're talking about the Nevrons and how the fact that expeditioners killed by the Nevrons don't die in the same way. They don't like Gomage. They
Mm-hmm.
just sort of solidify into these almost like puppet stone
And their chroma
statues.
remains within their bodies.
Exactly. And like contextually that then makes sense because Clea wants to get Aline out,
Mm-hmm.
and Gomaging people lets the chroma go back to Aline, keeping her in the painting for longer. So killing the expeditioners with Nevrons prevents the chroma going back to Aline, and thus, in some ways, expediting her, at least her weakening state. I think there is like a minor thing that I can't quite wrap my head around, that I can't tell if it's a plot hole or not, or whether I'm missing something. If if Renoir's goal is to get Aline out of the painting, why would he try to prevent the expeditions? Because the expeditions, without knowing the truth, want to wipe out the paintress, which would eject Aline from the painting. So why would Renoir, painted Renoir, try to stop those people? Unless we are to assume that Renoir in the real world has no say whatsoever, and that this iteration that Aline has conjured of Renoir is fully buying into the canon that Aline has created of Renoir being a villain.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's like maybe that's that, but I think there is maybe a slight loophole there that doesn't quite connect up. But I don't think, again, it doesn't, as with anything critical in the game, it doesn't collapse the narrative, I don't think.
I think, yeah, I think it's one of those things like Aline painted him as a villain, a distorted version of her husband, and I think from my I want to know if it's the first time and you might know this, is this the first expedition he's actively went and attacked? Because in my mind, he only did that because Mael was there. I I feel like
It's
I
not
thought
said either way, but
okay.
I got that same feeling.
Yeah, so that's what I thought. So like in my mind, like the other expeditions either lost to the paintress or was killed by the Nevrons along the way, which helps get her out. So like the actual Renoir is happy with that, but she made him to be like, "Hey, don't come kill me because like I'm trying to help you here."
Mm,
It is one of those things where I was a little confused at this. Like, it took me a little bit to even like I was like, okay, so that Renoir isn't the Renoir that's in the like he didn't come in and look like that. He's the curator.
yeah.
Because there's this weird in between space, right, in the painting world where like they and you see this at the end, like where you see Verso's soul, where he's like he looks like the curator, he looks like the paintress, and so like when you see those are the actual people.
Yeah. So the conclusion I came to was that real Renoir in the real world is behind the gommage,
Mm-hmm.
and the painted Renoir is simply acting out the part of the
That's what I
villain
think.
attempting to stop the heroes, and in Aline's eyes, of course, Verso and his friends would be the heroes.
Yes, because it's Verso's like world, it's Verso's story, and
Yeah,
she's
exactly.
she's just she's keeping that alive. Is how
Yeah.
that's how I've interpreted it.
Yeah. And by de facto, you know, the story of Verso would be to stop the paintress, even if that means Aline herself.
Mhm.
And Renoir is real Renoir is diametrically opposed to that objective. So painted Renoir would want to stop Verso. Yeah. Complicated.
It is. It gets it gets a little confusing at this point for sure.
Does.
I think overall, like it makes sense, but the finer intricate details can trick you up.
Well, a question I wanted to ask before I
Yeah.
forget about um Alicia. Like,
Hmm.
I don't know whether it was just me. Could you tell immediately that it was essentially the same character model as Mael?
Yes.
Okay, because I
I didn't know if they were twins or something. Like
yeah,
yeah,
the first time I saw her, I was like, I know she's monochromatic in black and white, but like that is
that's
just
Mael.
Mael.
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
Okay, okay,
No, and I don't know if I want to say it's intentional to like get you to like start to think about like what they are, but it is very weird because I mean, it is a painted version of
yeah,
Mael.
because like she's got the mask and everything, and obviously that's to conceal some of the burns. But at the same time, I was like, are they trying to hide who she is? Because I can very clearly tell who that is. I
Yeah,
don't know
yeah.
why she's there or what she's about, but that is just
I thought it
yeah.
was some sort of reincarnation thing at first,
Hmm.
like that maybe their souls got split, like some weird thing like that, right? Like I didn't know it was like, oh, it's a painted version of my daughter.
Yeah, I also thought of like because of the gestrals like reincarnation thing, there was a brief period where I was like, so maybe Alicia was part of Expedition Zero as well, and that something happened in like the reincarnation process that split them. That like
Mm-hmm.
the Alicia part got left behind and Mael got reincarnated because
Yep.
there was the whole for obvious reasons the mystery about her parents,
Mm-hmm.
and how she was adopted and her parents died at a very young age. I was like, well, that's clearly got something to do with it.
They certainly
But
drop hints that she's part of this family, like
yeah,
from
yeah,
early on. Um, so you decide to go back into the painting, um, to because your parents are back in there fighting, right? And now you have white hair, which you gotta say, don't know if I like the character model as much with the white hair as opposed to the red hair, but it is what it is.
with certain haircuts, I think it looks pretty good. But the default one in particular, yeah, I'm with you.
I didn't
The
like
ginger
Verso's
hair.
hair either, like the white streaks. So it's like, bro, can we get some four men's over here or something? Like, just start dyeing this.
Yeah,
So you go back and you have all your memories now. You know you're a paintress, and Verso is he's still there because that's like, he didn't get erased, right? Or did he get
yeah,
erased? Yeah. Um, and then you bring your friends back. You have a little talk with your father first. You're like, Dad, you gotta stop this. You know, don't be doing this. And he's like, hell nah, we're getting your mom out of this painting, and then we're gonna destroy it. And he summons a bunch of new Nevrons, which have the self-indulgent names of Clair and Obscur. I hated that so much, bro. And then there's a super boss called Clair Obscur, and I was like, yep, of course there's.
nice and on the nose,
Yeah.
very subtle there.
Yeah. So you leave Lumiere, which he's taken over. You remake your friends. You explain to them what's going on. CL takes it quite well because CL was like, oh, that means I can bring my husband back. So like again, sees the positive of everything. She doesn't care that she's a fake paint person. Lune is a little more like Verso, you lied to us again. She's very mad about the lying. You knew all this. You should have told us. But I'd like to give a little like, how do you tell someone like, hey, your world isn't real, you aren't real?
There's not really an easy way to let someone down with that, is there? So
So should be a little iffy. Monoko knew the whole time apparently too because they're homies. He was cool with it. So their next mission is go back to Lumiere and defeat Renoir and
mhm,
decide the fate of Verso's painting.
yeah. And they have that sick montage where they're going around collecting the chroma from
Yep.
all the dead expeditioners. And it's
Yeah.
like I got so close to putting out a tweet or something of the Army of the Dead from Return of the
Mm-hmm.
King, jumping off the boat
Mm-hmm.
with Aragorn and Legolas and Gimli. I was so close to putting that out, but I don't want to. Not that anybody would have been able to draw associations
Yeah.
with what I
Even
was
hint at
referencing.
spoilers, though.
But like, when you do decide to go back to Lumiere, which you don't have to do straight away, but when you do, they're on the dock and like the music kicks up and all of the spectral expeditioners are behind you. It's like, this is so sick, man.
Yeah, that was a really cool scene because obviously she has her painter's powers now. She's like, we're gonna need a lot of chroma. He's got an army. We need an army, and it is cool. I was like, is she gonna bring back Gustav? Like that was my first thought. I was like, she gonna bring
Mm,
back Gustav as like a ghost to fight with them. That doesn't ultimately happen. It's just a bunch of like no name expeditioners from the old expeditions. But if you do go back to Lumiere and proceed to the final encounter, you make your way through the town, fighting the Nevrons. You like see like scenes of the expeditions like having crazy boss
crashing out of
fights.
the
Yeah,
sky
yeah,
and
it's dope. Like you'll just be walking, and then everyone will show up, and like an expedition ghost will just swoop in and like take them out. Really cool visuals. Really impressive what they're doing here. You get to Renoir. He's like, I'm not having this. Stop acting up, child. Is essentially so you fight him. Different move set this time. He can summon the Axons, right? And they can be a pain to deal with. He has a lot of different moves at his disposal. This one much more difficult than the paintress fight.
yeah, agreed.
This felt like a final boss encounter.
Hmm. Yeah, it's got the trappings of everything you've learned thus far. Like you say, the boss rush trope. It's sort of elements of that by
Mm-hmm.
pulling in moves of other enemies that you fought. Do you remember how to parry this?
Yeah.
What the timing is? How good are you?
Yeah. How many times can you
Um,
jump in a row?
exactly. Oh, yes, Christ. Yeah,
So,
no, very very cool fight though. I think
yeah.
worthy of uh, what is essentially the final boss.
Yeah. So you defeat him. Mael has a heart to heart with him, convinces her dad, like, hey, leave the painting. I'll take care of everything. And then a portal opens up and Verso goes through it. And this is where you see like the in-between space between that, like paintresses can exist in, because Verso's like soul is there painting away on the canvas, and Verso's like, you have to stop, like because he wants to die, right? Like he's over it at this point. He's like, we need to end this world, like we can't keep doing this. My mom is losing all of her time just in here. I don't want this to happen to Mael either, because Mael is very much at this point like kind of invested in her friends, her life here. Like she thinks this world is also real to her. So Mael comes through, and she's like trying to Verso, like, what are you doing here? It's dangerous for you here. You can't be here. Go back to the paint world. And he's like, no. So then you have, and this is, I didn't expect this, because you don't really have like a choice, and you don't really have a choice and consequence like this throughout the rest of the game, right? But like it says, like, do you want to play as Mael or Verso and decide the fate of this painting? And then you have to fight the opposite one. So on your first playthrough, what did you choose?
I chose to fight as Mael.
Me too.
Um, because like I understood Verso's perspective, but I wasn't. I guess one, I wasn't willing myself to let all the characters go because I kind of knew what
Mm-hmm.
would have to happen if I did take Verso's path. But also, technically, from like a coverage standpoint, I wasn't sure what like the game design was going to happen. Like, if I chose Verso's thing, did that mean that I wouldn't then be able to go back to the world map and finish everything
Mm-hmm.
up and keep exploring? I was like, well, I haven't really seen many games, if any, function this way. But what if this is the one
Yeah, yeah.
where I choose to end the canvas and the canvas is actually ended? So I couldn't take that risk. But it also aligned that I was more on Mael's side than Verso's. So
Yeah, I obviously, as I said, Mael's my favorite character, so I was like, I'm going with. I gotta be out. Like Verso, don't like nearly as much as Gustav. I know he
mm,
is much more like integral to the actual plot of the game, but like and I think Ben Starr does a phenomenal job. Like, absolutely nothing wrong with the performance. It's just I didn't connect with Verso the way I was connecting with Gustav.
sure.
But Mael was my favorite character, so I was like, I'm on board with her. Like, I don't want CL and Lune to die and disappear, even if they're not real. Like, to me, I don't see the harm in this world existing. And I know Verso and his argument is like, my soul, I'm not at peace, right? Like I can't rest in here because I have to live forever, which I totally get. But I did choose Mael. I beat Verso, and then you get this ominous, almost it's very melancholy for sure. Because what I've taken from it is it's after all that happened, Mael has brought everyone back to life, including Gustav, who's now seemingly in a happy relationship with Sophie. um, they've returned to the theater, the opera house. That if you've been paying attention throughout the game, Verso was like, "Oh, I used to play piano there, right?" Like he was a musician, and everyone's there to see a performance. Verso's on stage, and the camera just kind of like lingers for so long on him, on her face. At one point, her face kind of gets like covered in paint, and it's like black and white music. My fiance walked in at the point when I was playing this. She's like, "Are you playing a horror game?" And then like Mael's face got, and I was like, "It's French. Don't worry about it. Like you don't got to know what's
Of
going on."
course.
Yeah, yeah. So like it almost seemed to me like the Verso on stage kind of remembers everything that happened, but like he can't really do much besides be play the role of Verso in this new world that Mael's created. So like I was left feeling like, oh God, did I choose wrong? Because like
Mhm.
they show you the contrast of like everyone's happy, joyful, people you lost along the way are now back, and Mael's like smiling, but then seeing her brother now trapped, being a puppet almost, is very heartbreaking.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's rough. I think, I haven't delved too much into the online discourse around it, but I think there is a world where people sort of definitively view this as the bad ending, if there is a bad ending,
Hmm.
of the two. Um, like it is played very, like you say, almost horror-esque. It is
Hmm.
very creepy. Um, and I agree that I think Verso, whether he is like fully reincarnated or whether he is sort of had his memory wiped or whether he still remembers everything but is just sort of being almost puppeted by Mael, to keep the reality that she wants to live in alive and still have him there. I don't know, but she is clearly Mael. Um, whether it is actually literally there or whether it's what Verso sees
Hmm.
and like interprets, it's the same paint over the eyes of Mael that Aline had.
Yep.
So it's like she is,
She's
whether
been in
she
here
is
too long.
whether she's actively been there too long or he sees that happening to her in the long run. It's kind of the same thing, right? Where
Hmm.
whether it is actively grief in the same way that it was trapping and torturing Aline, or whether it is like this willful, blissful ignorance, um, living in this fantasy for Mael, it is like again kind of bittersweet. Whereas like I like the fact that all of these characters get to be happy, um, but you're left with a stinger of like, oh, but it not only is it literally a lie because it's a fake world, but also is it a lie because Mael's brought them all back and is making them be happy?
Hmm.
Um, it's a very it's a bold ending, I think, for them to choose because I think that a lot of people are going to side with Mael, and it's not a happy ending. Like it doesn't have to necessarily be a bad, super tragic ending, but it's not a happy ending either.
Hmm. It
So
I she so Mael clearly lied to her dad, right? She's like, I
yeah,
won't spend like I'm gonna stay here just for a little bit. And that signified to me that like she's broken that lie. She's now falling into this cycle of grief, and she's trapped in there, whether she wants to admit it or not. Um, and that is kind of like it's kind of depressing because I chose I chose her for a lot of reasons, but I chose her based on the fact that like I believe her. I think she can find a healthy balance. I think she'll like keep the world alive, but in a way that makes sense, not like what Aline was doing. And to see that she's almost just we defeated one paintress and now another paintress has risen. again, like you said, not a happy ending. A, probably a bad ending for Mael. A
Mhm.
happy ending for everyone except her and Verso, I would say.
Yeah. Yeah. Assuming again, like assuming they have the sort of free will, because
Exactly. Yeah.
it depends on how you read Verso in that scene. Because if you read Verso as being like puppeted / manipulated by Mael into performing and still being around, there is that then opens the can of worms of like, is she just doing that to everyone? Because she isn't ready or doesn't want to face the reality of the fact that she is really severely disfigured and wounded and alone in the real world and doesn't have a brother and wouldn't be able to be with all of these people that she's become friends with. It's
which is a great point, because like I completely understand why she doesn't want to go back,
yeah,
because she's lost so much, lost her brother, lost her ability to speak, and those aren't things that she has in here. And here she has family, she has loved ones, she has the ability to talk and do what she wants. And I I honestly, it's one of those things, like, you're conflicted. It's like I honestly don't know if I'd make a different choice,
yeah,
but also she could be hurting people.
yeah. And it's like an allegory for the real world, and not the real world in the game, but like the real world. It's like, what do we do when we are feeling upset or
Hmm.
stressed or scared or whatever? We go back to comforts. We take solace and switch our brains off to entertainment, whether that is TV or film or games or whatever. We distract ourselves with things, and often that comes at the expense of facing the reality of situations, particularly in situations that involve grief, right?
Hmm.
So like, we understand it, we get it, that's a universal thing, but at the same time, we're kind of given hints of the idea that actually maybe it might have, even if it is a rougher experience for Mael, it might have, depending on your perspective, been a better choice to not stay in the canvas. And I think that kind of moral complexity that it presents, again, kind of out of nowhere, because there aren't that many sort of choice decisions in the game, certainly not of this consequence. I think that's very powerful.
Hmm.
And it didn't feel shoehorned in. It felt, I mean, I don't know whether you've seen what the other ending
Yeah,
is
I have
or
it. So
okay.
I wanted to talk about that, because if you choose Verso's ending, it's a much different situation, right? Like, you destroy the canvas, Mael and her family can no longer be in there, and it's, I would say, a happier ending for her family,
Sure.
because like she's at like a memorial, like a funeral for Verso, almost like a memorial. And she kind of sees like Lune, CL, like the expedition squad and her friends from that previous life, and they like fade away. But it almost gives me a feeling of acceptance. Like, this is
Mm,
what my brother wanted, even though I've lost all these people now, my family and I are back together, and that's like enough. That like I was, it almost feels like she's accepted not only her situation, but the entire situation. It reads happier to me, even though when I see the scene, I'm like, not like we lost everyone. Like, it is one of those things, like, both endings can be bad or good depending on what perspective you're looking at it from.
yeah. People lose in both scenarios, right? There isn't a win here, really. Um, it's just who gets hurt. And I think you're right in the fact that I think, having experienced both endings, I do feel that Verso's is the better one of the two, but that sucks, because obviously it comes at the expense of the characters and the world that
Hmm.
we've fallen in love with. But it is arguably better, because everybody would say to somebody suffering grief in the real world would be, at some point you do have to confront it and you do have to move past it, even if that means, cutting off a part of your life or someone who's negative in your life or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really rough to do. But it's the idea of, all good things must come to an end. And the world of Clair Obscur was a wonderful world. But then what are you ejecting Alicia out into? Do her family properly reconcile? We're given indications that might happen.
Mm-hmm.
But again, is that going to happen? And then you have the painters fighting in a very real war with the writers in the
Which
real world.
we don't really explore all that
We
much.
so like we don't know what the consequences of that are, how war torn is the real world, how dire are the consequences there. It's that nebulousness again in both endings, where it's like we don't have all the answers, so we kind of just have to sit with our choice and think about why we made it. And that is again, if you know me, if you know my taste in games and experiences, I like things that make me think and that make me feel
Same.
uncomfortable and question stuff. And this is another perfect example of it. And I felt kind of off about Mael's ending when I first got it. It didn't sit right with me. And I was like, I don't know if they stuck the landing. But after sitting on it for a little bit and then seeing the other ending, I think I understand what both are accomplishing, and I think they
Mm-hmm.
do it very well.
Yeah, if the overall theme of Expedition 33 is acceptance, whether it's accepting Mael, accepting Gustav died, accepting her brother died, accepting her disfigurement, the mom and father accepting their son's death, like if that's the overall theme, I do think Verso's ending is the better ending. I think it
Mm,
brings more closure to people than Mael's, which I was much like you. I watched it. I was kind of like, I didn't feel good. I felt very like, I was like, oh, wow. I don't have a good emotional state right now. Then I digested it more and more. I was like, I understand what they were going with. And I do think that they nailed that ending. I think it's emotionally and visually striking and powerful. So I'm happy with both endings. Ghostly Guides, our last question, wrote in, said, what do you guys want for a sequel to Expedition 33? So I know the developers have kind of talked about maybe doing DLC for it. I would kind of hope the DLC is just like, hey, we added an area with like super bosses or something, or like fleshed out the like mid game DLC, as opposed to, hey, we're going to add more onto the ending, because then they canonize a choice. And I
mhm.
don't know if I want that. That's kind of how I feel about like a sequel for the game too. Like the only way I would want a sequel is if it one imports your save and like would kind of make choices based on whatever ending. I don't know how that would work, because that'd always be two different games. But like if you go with Mael's ending, I would like, it'd be kind of cool to see people like her turn into the villain almost. And I don't know if that, how that would even like, if people like that. The other one, and this might be the more likely way a sequel, is to explore the writers versus painters like war that's going on.
Yeah. So I in terms of the DLC, I I I don't really know what they can do. What I would anticipate if they did do DLC, like the easiest thing in my mind is to um let us experience a small side story of one of the prior expeditions.
Mm,
Um, Now, obviously, through like the journals and stuff, we know like the fates of most of the expeditions, but I think that there is room there to maybe tell a story, even if we kind of know how it ends, that could explore like a new part of the world, maybe a different part of the continent, or um, introduce like obviously new side characters and enemies, maybe a new villain of some kind, and then have you know tidbits that tie back into the main game of like, oh, so this thing that you find in this zone in the main game, this is how this thing got here, or this is how this fight happened that we see the aftermath of, or something
Mhm.
along those lines. I think that might be kind of cool. But yeah, in terms of sequel, I think I'm right there with you, where whether it is actually from the writer's perspective and we see like the other side of the war and we actually find out what the war is about, like if the painters can do this, what can the writers do?
Mhm.
I think that's an interesting premise. Like the painters paint canvases that have worlds in them. Can the writers write stories that come alive, or is it, can they write things in or out of existence, or like I'm very intrigued. I think the only other option, which is the one I'd least prefer, is if they did canonize an ending
Yep.
and then had like Alicia and maybe another member of the family explore a different canvas, which I'd eat it up. I'd take it. Of course I would, because I just
Mhm.
want more of this world and more of this story and characters. But I don't like the idea that they canonize. I'd much prefer this to just be a one-off than to
Same.
try and retcon a decision on me. Even if it's the decision I made, I like the nebulousness of both.
All I know is I'm in for whatever SandFall Interactive does next.
Yeah.
Because I think for a studio's first game, they've clearly proven like the quality that you can expect, and whether they hit the highs of Expedition 33 with like a 92 on OpenCritic, like, but there's no reason for me to doubt the studio's talent and their storytelling and their gameplay chops. So like I'm open to whatever, whether we stay in Expedition 33's lore world or if they want to do something completely different.
Yeah. And I think it's funny, it's sort of on a slight tangent. I remember before the game came out, we got the news that they were doing the movie adaptation or whatever.
Hmm.
And it was one of those where I was like, the game hasn't come out. It's this small random game. Why is it getting a film adaptation? Um, and now I'm like, give me as much Clair Obscur as you
Uh
can.
huh.
I will be day one in the theater watching it. Um, I'm concerned a little bit because I don't know if this can fit into like a 2-hour
I don't know
movie.
how they would handle the ending either.
Again, that's scary. Like you don't canonize something. Don't do
Yeah.
it.
You,
Um,
you have to pick one. Like I don't like that.
pick a screening. Is it Mael screening or Verso screening? Um,
The ending is just Verso and Mael like drawing their swords, and then you don't know.
cut to black. Yeah,
Yeah.
Michael Bay. What I've done. That kind of thing. Um, but yeah, no, I'm so glad I was wrong about that. Because it did come in like the slew of movie announcements of adaptations of
Hmm.
games. I'm like, oh, another one. I'm like, no, this is actually the one that I want more so than almost all the others.
And whether it ever actually gets made is remains to be seen, right?
TBD.
Like
But you
it's
would assume if there is one out of all of the proposed video game adaptations, considering this game's success, I think the odds certainly went up.
yes. I mean, Split Fiction's getting one with Sydney Sweeney apparently.
I
Which,
mean,
as someone that's played Split Fiction, why? I don't I like Sydney Sweeney. I don't know if she's gonna play those characters well. Either one.
yeah, yeah. But
But
she's talented.
she's something.
That's right. She is something.
Well, I think we will wrap it there for Expedition 33, our spoiler cast. We've gone over 2 hours
Hell yeah.
talking about it as we normally do, you and me for our spoiler cast. So Sam, lovely chatting with you as always.
Indeed.
We need another game that we can jump into like this that leaves us with lots of talking points.
Amen. What's it going to
Because
be? I just
I
like I'm excited to find out.
I don't know. We got to pull up the Game Informer calendar. I don't know if
That's
it'll be
right.
this year.
Yeah,
It's so
it
hard to get
seems a
one of
bit,
these.
yeah,
So
very
hard to get
rare.
one of these. But you want to let everyone know where they can find you, my friend.
People can find me anywhere and everywhere at Sam Heaney. That's Heaney.
Awesome. Everyone, please go check out Sam, especially over on No Limits, our PlayStation show. If you're unfamiliar with that, you can find me at the Muffin Mon everywhere. It's a 17I07A. Follow us at Save the Game Media on Blue Sky, like so many of you have been. We've almost doubled our followers in the last few. We
Mm,
got added to a few independent media lists, which
hell yeah.
cannot say thank you enough for everyone, supporting other small content creators. Thank you all. But until next time, we will see you. Goodbye.
For those who